Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to literally just imagine your mind racing at 100 miles an hour, right? It's intense, it's fast, and sometimes it just feels completely and totally overwhelming. We have all been there. Lying awake, our brains running like an engine with a stuck throttle. But today, we're going to completely reframe that whole experience. We are diving into the hidden psychology of overthinking. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, you're going to see your own mind in a radically different light. So have you ever wondered why some people can just effortlessly move on from a conversation in seconds? Like they walk away, they let it go, they go grab a coffee. But for you, your mind replays that exact same interaction for hours. You sit there analyzing literally every single word that was said. You pick apart every subtle tone of voice, and man, it's incredibly exhausting. It feels as if your brain has this built-in loud setting that it stubbornly refuses to turn off, while everyone else seems to be living in this quiet, breezy simplicity. Okay, let's dive into this, because this right here is where the major psychological pivot happens. While overthinking is so often written off as just some form of anxiety, psychology actually suggests something entirely different for highly intelligent people. It is a byproduct of advanced mental habits and a totally natural drive for depth. Your brain isn't simply worrying or broken. It is actively building complex models of the world to find real meaning in places where, honestly, most people only ever see surface-level facts. It's not a flaw. It's an advanced operating system.
All right, let's move into part one, building the world picture.
And this brilliantly illustrates the fundamental difference in how we process the world around us. So the average person simply reacts to incoming data. Something happens, they respond, they memorize facts as isolated pieces of information. But the intelligent mind does something psychologists call context building. Before making a decision, before letting an event go, this brain tries to understand what is changing, what is connected, and what could happen next. Because your mind is constantly building a world picture in advance, you overthink because you are meticulously evaluating the significance of every single new signal you receive. You aren't just memorizing facts, you are building intricate mental models. Fast learners and deep thinkers are fundamentally driven to understand the why behind absolutely everything. And that drive leads to this core question that deep thinkers are constantly asking themselves: how does this connect to what I already know? Because you are constantly looking for the how and the why behind every topic or interaction, your mind mentally explores a situation from dozens of different angles. You aren't just taking things at face value. You are searching for layers of meaning before you are completely satisfied. This act of deep inquiry is exactly what keeps your brain continuously engaged. It actively prevents your mind from simply switching off after a task is done.
Moving on to part two, observing thoughts and details.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the concept of metacognition. It's the ability to think about your own thinking. And psychology highlights this as one of the absolutely strongest predictors of high intelligence. Intelligent people don't just casually have thoughts. They actively observe their thoughts. They question their own focus, they audit their own memory, and they challenge their own biases. This incredible layer of internal analysis means that when you are replaying experiences, you aren't doing it because you are stuck in a rut. You are doing it because your mind is highly engaged in searching for gaps in its own understanding. It is just constantly auditing itself.
But it's not just internal. You naturally pay way closer attention to external signals too. Subtle changes in tone of voice, fleeting facial expressions, tiny micro shifts in behavior. Because your brain is highly sensitive to these emotional signals that many others completely miss, you inherently have significantly more data to process. I mean, really think about that. You are taking in 10 times the information in a single conversation. So what looks like frantic overthinking to everyone else is really just your brain attempting to connect all these separate subtle signals into one coherent pattern.
Which brings us to part three, nighttime processing and control. So during the day, you have this natural defense mechanism. Distractions, your daily work, just the general noise of life, all of this acts as a filter. It kind of keeps the sheer volume of data your intelligent brain is constantly collecting somewhat manageable. You're busy, so the deep, complex processing gets put on the back burner. But what happens when that daytime filter disappears? So the crucial point is that when you lay down and the noise stops, those unprocessed thoughts that were simply too complex to handle during a busy day finally rise to the surface. For a highly active mind, the silence of the night doesn't bring peace and quiet. Instead, it brings a much, much louder volume to old conversations, to future problems, and to memories that desperately require processing. Your brain finally has the quiet room it needs to unpack all that data it collected. And as it unpacks this data in the dark, the brain often falls into a behavioral loop. First off, it naturally dislikes uncertainty. It craves predictability to feel a sense of psychological safety.
Second, because of this, intelligent people often use overthinking as a false attempt at control. You start mentally rehearsing future conversations and catastrophic scenarios as a way to prevent something bad from happening. You replay what you should have said earlier that day. And why? To protect your ego and ensure your social mask remains perfectly intact for the next time. It's your brain's misguided way of trying to keep you safe from the completely unpredictable nature of human interaction.
And that leads us into part 4. Your mind isn't broken.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an incredibly empowering truth. Overthinking is not evidence of a broken mind. It is actually evidence of a highly adaptive brain that is deeply invested in understanding its environment. It's trying to build a strong, unshakable foundation of knowledge. Once you recognize that this depth is an evolutionary adaptation, that your mind is doing this to protect you and equip you, you can start to use it as a massive strength rather than a burden. You were simply wired to understand the world on a deeper level.
Which leaves us with this final thought from our source material to ponder. Why do intelligent people notice details that others completely miss? Because once you start understanding the small things that shape people's lives, the subtle psychology, the hidden patterns, the deep connections, you realize that what feels like a burden is actually a profound gift of observation. Keep questioning. Keep observing those hidden patterns most people completely overlook. And remember, your loud mind is just doing exactly what it was brilliantly designed to do. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.